Joe Rogan is back in the news. The podcast host recently shared on an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience that attempts to cancel him apparently backfired. According to Rogan, at the peak of the recent calls to push him off Spotify, he gained, get this, a whopping 2 million subscribers.
In the same vein, Rogan, of course, couldn't resist weighing in on the failure of streaming service CNN Plus. Let's watch that.
We're speaking on this day where CNN...
Yeah, CNN Plus went under.
CNN
minus.
CNN just went under.
They spent $300 million. They got 10,000 subscribers. Imagine the hubris of thinking that something that people don't want for free, that you're going to charge money for it. We're going to have the Jake Tapper book club. Jake Tapper seems like a great guy. But I mean, I feel like I don't have to pay for his book club. I feel like you should put that on Twitter.
Oh, I mean, I do feel bad for the CNN Plus people. There are a lot of people that work there. It wasn't, of course, it was definitely, why did they think that people would pay for something they're not watching? But there were a lot of people who lost their jobs. I know it, and it's just insane. But it's crazy that Joe Rogan ends up gaining, this is why those cancel culture pushes, and this was from the Spotify employees wanting to oust Joe Rogan. They didn't want him there. They were mad. They thought, just like what we were talking about with with what the Daily Beast was trying to write about here on the Hill, saying, oh, employees one are gone. That's what was going on with Spotify. Employees wanting him gone, thinking he's misinformation and fringe with his views, and he's got to go. And they tried to uprise, and he gained 2 million subscribers. It's almost now, I mean, if you're wanting to gain subscribers, if you're wanting your company to grow, you should just have stage a pretend revolt in your company.
I thought about this when my books were coming out. Andy No had a book come out around the same time, and they tried to shut down the library where it was being sold at the bookstore. Rather, books aren't sold in libraries; they're rented in libraries. They're sold in bookstores. They tried to shut down the bookstore, and of course, led him selling 1 trillion copies. Wish someone would do that for me. Antifa, please come burn down the store where my book's being sold. Because of that.
Now I know who did it. Now I know who planted the Daily Beast story. Now I know. No, it was the executive producer. It was the executive producer of the show. She wants the show to grow. Yeah. So she was like, I got an idea. Let's Rogan her. And if we Rogan and Spotify her, then maybe it will grow. I see. Very clever, guys. Very, very clever.
No, it's true. And actually, people who criticize the idea of cancel culture, people who say, oh, cancel culture doesn't exist or it's no big deal or whatever, one of the things they'll use that's one of the better points that they make, even though I disagree with that, they'll say, well, a lot of people who are supposedly canceled actually do benefit from that kind of negative attention and come out stronger than ever. And that is true in Dave Chappelle type cases where all the cancelers succeed at is drawing more attention to the person and also making their ideas or their viewpoints seem dangerous or forbidden, or we can't let you hear this, it's too scary. Like that's putting an X-rated label on music for kids. People want to listen to it then. Kids are like, what do my parents not want me to listen to? That's what I want to listen to. It's that kind of phenomenon. But that only happens, I think, mostly for people who are already established and pretty economically insulated. Like, when you just get fired from your job because somebody complained that you made a hand gesture that they think is a white nationalist hand gesture, even though it's not, like that person doesn't end up with 2 million subscribers, right? They just lose their job and suffer for it. So little people who are regular people who don't have other means of communicating, when they're canceled, it is really bad for them. It's not bad in cases like this.
Well, but hopefully as more higher profile people like Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle, as people try to cancel them and then it backfires and it doesn't work, then hopefully bosses around the country will see that. And when somebody makes a complaint against another employee, they just say, well, maybe they could somehow kind of weather the storm a little bit rather than just automatically caving to cancel culture, which we saw really happen a lot early on. Now, I do feel like there's a bit more of an armor around people and companies where they're kind of like, I don't know, okay, yeah, right, and they kind of move on beyond it. We're even seeing politicians do this whenever they're in a scandal. They start to just say, well, I'm just going to ride this out, right? Like a Northam, right? Who's like, I'm just going to ride this out. I'm not going to let people cancel me over this.
Right.
And so I do think that society is starting to say, okay, yeah, you noisy group of people always saying you want to get rid of opposing views. We hear you, whatever. You want to get rid of people because of something they did 30 years ago in a photograph. Like, okay, we're just moving on from that. I do think that the culture around cancel culture is shifting and people just aren't feeling as pressured. But I would like to see Dave Chappelle's numbers. Do you know, did it? I mean, I would imagine his special exploded after the controversy.
I don't know
would
what the
imagine
numbers
way more
are, but
people
I'm
watched it.
quite confident. Yeah, it helped. It caused more people to want to watch it. And people were like, "What is this? What are people? People are talking about this. I want to see what that is." Like, that's a well-known kind of effect that holds true. You want to generate a little bit of controversy, and actually, even the company, Netflix, wants a little bit of controversy. A book publisher wants a little bit of controversy. They want the right. Spotify wants enough controversy, I'm sure, to bring in 2 million more subscribers. They want the right amount of controversy, but then for some of these companies, not Spotify, which obviously, and Netflix, which both really stood. Well, Spotify completely and Netflix mostly, although I think it put out some kind of conflicting statements, but mostly these companies stood by the person. They want the right amount of controversy, and then then it will spiral. If it gets too big, then they start to feel the pressure from their own employees, the minority of employees who are very liberal and very censorship inclined, and then they get in trouble. So it's a difficult dance to keep, to have the ball of outrage or concern be just big enough to actually be economically beneficial for you.
Well, I mean, a lot of people went after Rogan. I mean, they tried. There were musicians who said, "I'm off the platform," and there was definitely more than just
boomer.
Right,
I almost said boomer magicians. Nobody cares what boomer magicians do. Even less so than boomer musicians.
Yeah, so I mean, there was definitely an actual, I would say, a more threatening push against Joe Rogan, but it only helped him. I mean, 2 million extra subscribers. And even with like the Daily Beast article, on Twitter, a lot of the people were commenting saying, "I'd never heard of her, but thanks for pointing me out. I watched some videos and I like her and now I'm subscribed." So
you did it, Kim. It was you, Kim.
Okay, I admit it. It was me. I did it. I planted my own smear story in order to boost my visibility.
I think it was the butler. The butler did it.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Good on Joe. 2 million extra subscribers. Good on Spotify,
Absolutely.
I guess. That teaches them something too.
Yeah. Well, and it shows. Hopefully that message will sink in, that these kinds of tactics against people like Joe Rogan, like Dave Chappelle, not only do they not work, they backfire. They make the person more popular. So maybe people will give up on this tactic. The only people you can really hurt are people who don't deserve to have their whole livelihoods destroyed because they said the wrong thing or whatever it was.
10 years ago on Twitter.
Right, 10 years ago on Twitter. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back for another great show tomorrow on Rising.
Yep. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen on the go, wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to check us out there. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.